welcome you to our program today. My name is Kathy. I'm a senior librarian with the Salinas Public Library, and I'm joined today by Isela Duarte, who's an adult services librarian. She'll also be helping with the program. We're very happy to welcome Amy Wu and Martha Montoya today. This author talk really revolves around Amy's new book, From Farms to Incubators, Women in Ag Tech and How They Make It Work. And Amy wrote the book, and Martha is one of the people in it. A couple of housekeeping things. We're here for about an hour. I encourage you to type your questions into the chat. You'll find the chat, usually it's right next to the controls for your audio and video. And if you type questions in, then when we get to the Q&A toward the end of the program, we'll be able to pose those questions to Amy and Martha. In California, we know that agriculture is a $50 billion industry, and here in the Salinas Valley, it's a $9 billion industry, one of the biggest employers in our county. We also produce 80% of the country's leafy greens, which is why we're known as the salad bowl of the world. Amy Wu is an award-winning writer for the women's ag and the ag tech movement. She is the author of the book we're discussing today. You may also know her from her documentary film, From Farms to Incubators, which has been presented at a number of different screenings and has generated a lot of interest. She spent more than 2 decades as an investigative reporter at media outlets, which included our own Salinas Californian, where she reported on agriculture and ag tech. And I'll let Amy say more about that and say more about some of the awards she's recently won when we get her started. Martha Montoya is the founder and CEO of Ag Tools, which was launched in 2017. And it's a platform for farmers and buyers that provides them with real-time intelligence with the goal of reducing food waste globally. That platform provides real-time information on over 75 different market variables, from weather to transportation to info about more than 500 different commodities to help growers better plan their crops. As of 2020, the company had 14 employees throughout 5 offices in the US, Mexico, and Colombia. So welcome to you both, and thank you so much for joining us today. We're really happy to be able to do this author talk. To get started, Amy, could you talk about yourself and your own professional background, especially what got you interested in ag tech and women innovators?
Well, my background is I'm a journalist by profession. I'm actually from the East Coast, from the suburbs of New York, and oh, that's good. I see more people joining. I was a reporter for newspapers for many years. For like I don't want to put my age, but I'm for maybe 20 plus years. I was a reporter, and a lot of the years covering investigative related things, certainly in business. So I'm going to start out by saying that I don't come from agriculture. My family, there's nobody in my family that actually was in farming or food or farming at all. And I grew up in the suburbs, and I used to actually think that the vegetables grew out of the aisles, but I'm a voracious consumer. And I love to eat, and I love to shop for food and so forth. So at the end of 2015, when I was assigned to the Salinas Valley, I had actually never visited the Salinas Valley before, and all I knew about it was that it was Steinbeck country. And when I landed in Steinbeck country, and when I drove around, and every corner I turned into was into a field of leafy greens. And I started to observe and be interested in the people working in agriculture. And I noticed that there were not a lot of women at the helm of the table, especially in decision-making roles, either at the head of the farms or head of agribusiness companies. And certainly I didn't know how many women were in ag tech. At the time, ag tech was a a small but growing sector in the Salinas, the local government was really trying to develop ag tech as part of the local economy. They saw it as an opportunity for more jobs also at the time. And I think now definitely there's growing interest in ag tech. So I started to, in covering this as a reporter, I began asking how many minority women entrepreneurs in ag tech do you know? I wanted to write their stories because I didn't see any stories about them. So everywhere I walked, in different meetings, I would just ask people, do you know of any women entrepreneurs in ag tech? And I didn't get many answers. I got a lot of blank stares at the time in 2016. So I kept asking the same question repeatedly. And then I ended up finding a handful of women, some of them from the Western Grower Center of Innovation and Technology, and Dennis Donahue certainly played a big role in connecting me with some of the women. And then from there, it snowballed, Kathy. There were more and more women that I would unearth. And in 2017, I made a documentary about 4 of the women, and it was the documentary just presented women, presented the fact that there are women in this sector. At the time, there were not a lot of people who knew about ag tech. People would say, what is ag tech? It sounded really foreign, like another language. I found myself explaining and also learning that this is the innovation and technology that helps growers be more efficient in their work and grow more efficiently. And then when the documentary, after it launched, it was really popular and we did a lot of events. And I thought I could have stopped there, but there were more and more inspiring stories. So I decided I was going to write a book in 2018, about 3 years ago. I said I wanted to write a book because I wanted to document all of the stories about women working in this area. Martha is one of the women that shared her story. And in the end, by 2020, I had collected nearly 30 portraits, profiles of women who had created the innovation to help growers solve some of growers' biggest problems. And it became more than an avocation. I think it became a real passion to actually tell their stories because I feel like there are still not enough women in the space, and yet I can go further a little bit, along. But women play such an important role in the food system, everywhere from shopping to making decisions in the household to cooking in the family. So that's a little bit about my background and how it led to from farms to incubators. I continue to collect the stories even after the book is published. But the book was just published less than a month ago, actually.
The beginning of May, yeah, we were very happy to get some copies into the library in time for this.
Excellent.
Martha, how about you? Tell us about your background and what got you to the ag tech aspects.
A little bit of different background, though journalism is in the blood of the family, but I grew up in coffee farms in Colombia. My grandfather, we were the 5th generation of coffee farmers in the family. And so the one thing that is common denominator across the world after I started traveling the world is that the farm workers are the women, right? And so my husband the other day asked, do you know how to pick up coffee? I said, obviously you need to know how to pick up your coffee, for God's sake. So you know how to pick up your coffee fast and move fast from one plant to the next one. And especially in the mountains, because we have to lean towards the mountain so we don't fall back. And we're in the Andes, so it's tougher to do that. So we have strong legs. We women in Colombia have strong legs because we have to hold that. And then, so I grew up within the whole family system of the coffee farms and the parents' education. My father migrated from the coffee farms into the cities and built the first school that was for working families in the evening. It was the first school for the evening people, so they could study in the evening to do the high school diploma. And then now I started going between the city and the farming area. And my first real experience on logistics, which is where this whole thing went to, is when I had to work the flowers of Colombia to Europe. And I had to work the Saturday, Sundays, harvest with the teams, put them in boxes, and go to the airport and wait until the plane will take off with the flowers. So I've been in the farming logistics since early age, and that's how I bought my first car and things of that nature. And then when I landed in the United States, my first job was started cleaning a house. I mean, we did what everybody had to do, take care of elderly people. And eventually I landed a job in a library. And I became a librarian and I loved it. And I started reading a lot. And that's when I said, oh, wait a minute, I can do this business of agriculture in this country. I didn't know there was a business per se. So landed a job in a company in Newport Beach as a receptionist. I put myself as I don't know much of anything. I don't have any diploma, though I was a chemist biologist, but I put like, I don't know anything. Let me go into a reception area to understand if I could be part of this whole ecosystem. And I got approved. And long story short, I started developing crops from then on. So my career took off with that first company from directors. It was a company from New Zealand as a receptionist, and became the hemisphere manager. And that's when I started developing crops worldwide for many corporations across the world. So, but it was I look back and it's the work ethics that comes from where I come from, the farming thinking and all that. And also seeing my grandfather hustling and struggling and fighting always the system of the Coffee Federation and himself. And so I saw that throughout my life. And so Actus, and later on you find out why Actus is part of that whole thinking process.
So it sounds like working through that egg company, produce company got you back into the agricultural sphere. What got you to the tech piece?
Well, I had to my mother, which was a very unusual mother, decided one day that she wanted to put a computer system in the school. And that was a year process. I'll never forget. It was long nights, long evenings. And my little brother at that point, she was like 14, 15, putting computers on and off. Those are whiz kits that put this combable things and all that stuff, was kind of part of that whole process. And I saw that struggle of my mother in technology, wanting to be modern, but not being able to, because it was the beginning of COBOL and Pascal. But for those young people, the whole systems in the United States and the world were programming COBOL and Pascal language, which is still today, and one of the biggest vacuum we have in the whole government world around the world. And so we were doing all that. And when my brother decided to do computer science engineering, I always kept, my mom got us into programming. I got into programming. So I learned programming, I learned technology, just because I had an unusual mother who put us through a bilingual school, who put us through this, who put us to play tennis, because she said that rich people play tennis, so go play tennis. So things like that, very unusual thing. And so that's how I grew up, with a very unusual mother that put us through that.
And so when you developed your company, how did you identify the problem you wanted to solve with your company?
Well, I had traveled the world doing the development of crops. And every time that I land into a country or a region to do a program, I always saw the same common denominator, that no matter what happened in the market, farmers will always end up with the short stick of the whole thing. Things will go wrong and everybody got paid, and the one who will not get paid and will hold that, it was the farmer. And I mean Vietnam, South Africa, Mexico, you name the country. But then when I was brought into the United States to do a program for the largest retailer in the world, in Salinas and in Santa Maria, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in the United States. Now this is easy. The same issue with the farmers. No matter what happened, everybody got paid by the farmers. I'm like, wow, this is a universal problem. And that's when I decided, and remember, my parents had built school for working families and taking care of people. So we had what they call social enterprise business. I said, you know what? If I'm going to end up my life, I'm going to do something right for the farmers. I mean, I can do 50 farmers, 100 farmers. How do we impact all the farming industry? And it's to bring awareness that the market is the one that makes the decision for the farmer, how they are going to end up getting paid. So let's get going. And that's why Actus was brought in, because of that shock of arriving into California, the world capital, technology, all that stuff, and still farmers in pain. Didn't make any sense.
Amy, switching back to you, I know that some reporting that you were doing for the Californian was how you first got introduced to ag tech and the women in ag tech. Can you expand on that a bit more?
Yeah, I was writing about local government and covering local government as a beat, you know, and within going to city council meetings and also writing about, like I said, the local economy of Salinas. You know, agriculture is such a tremendous part of the economy. I mean, it's it's one of the main drivers actually of the region. And I saw that there was the opportunity to tell stories that weren't told also within that. Traditionally, agriculture and technology are male dominated, especially when it comes to leadership positions. But I was super excited to see that there was this new sector that was like developing in between these two big sectors. And it was really interesting to see it like go from this little thing to like something much bigger today. And I saw it as a window of opportunity for women, really intelligent, creative, smart women who want to tackle big impact problems to get into the space of both agriculture and technology. And what I found was interesting was that the women, despite their many interesting, very diverse backgrounds, like Martha has such a diverse background. She's actually a cartoonist, an award-winning cartoonist as well, and a librarian. So despite their diversity of background, they shared a lot of commonalities. I mean, they not only wanted to tackle big impact problems, they come from a really solid background in science, technology, engineering, and math. Some of them had worked at large food companies or agriculture companies before, but weren't in the decision-making positions. So they finally said, I want to hang my own shingle. And I thought it was important to tell their stories because I really, in the broad brush of things, I'm hoping that young people, youth, especially in areas and regions that are ag-centric, will consider that agriculture is more than tractors and overalls. Everybody eats. Some of us love to eat, like myself. There's such a great opportunity. I mean, to get into the space that really allows for a wide range of talent and skills. So if you're interested in science and math, if you're interested in storytelling and marketing, I saw this tremendous opportunity. And what I also saw in talking with some of the youth in the Salinas Valley area is that they grew up with parents and grandparents that had worked as field workers. And they were being, growing up, they were I can't say told, but it was given that they would try to leave Salinas and they would not come back. The jobs were outside of the region, the good jobs, I should say, right? That were outside the region. But actually, quite a few of them wanted to stay in the region. They want to stay close to their family. Culturally, I think family is also really important. So I was like, I'm super excited, to spread the message that there's opportunities in ag tech, and maybe you could get a really good job in the region and also stay in the region. So that's a message that I wanted to tell by telling the women's stories and inspiring young people to consider that as well. Yeah. So I reported on it, but I would also say that within the reporting, I increasingly saw that there needed to be more and more of these stories told. So there was not a newspaper just covering women in ag tech. And to this day, there is no newspaper that just covers women in ag tech. So I decided to take From Farms to Incubators solo and to take it on its own and to keep building on the stories within that space.
Could you say a little bit about how your initial work on the documentary informed the work you did in writing the book?
It was very closely connected. I think the documentary made me see that there is an interest in this topic and a keen interest. I would screen the movie and often have a panel of really awesome women, such as Martha. And we would have standing room audiences that would be very surprised, and they would say, wow, I didn't know women were in this space, and I don't know anything about ag tech. And also I found that the women in the space didn't know that other women existed, and they were seeking to connect with the other women also. So that really drove me to continue with the project, and to also ask the question of, besides the women we presented, what are some of the other technologies? I started to think about getting a variety of innovations and technologies illustrated in the book, and also make sure that we had a variety of voices in the book. So a good number are from California or have connections to California in the book. But we also have a woman from Australia. We have a woman from Brazil, and we have several women from the Midwest. And sometimes I'm asked, why do you have an Australian and a Brazilian in there as well? And then the rest of them are from California. And I would say that I didn't have a rubric as to what women ended up in the book. The most important thing for me was that they, first of all, had an innovation that was already out there. And I can't say proven, because a lot of them are early stage companies, but they already had a product or something that they were testing on the farm. The second thing was that they were open to telling their stories, because a lot of my initial questions was, what did your grandparents do for a living? What did your parents do? What did you want to be in high school? And it really opened up the conversation. And I would say a real curiosity of mine was, why would somebody with no background in farming or agriculture want to launch their own ag tech company? Because being an entrepreneur is already challenging enough. You have to raise your own money, build your own team. It's like a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. And I think that it has to be a passion or something that drives that. So I would say that after the documentary was completed, I went back to a lot of the women a few years later just to see if they were still in the marathon race. I wanted to see where they were. And in fact, the majority of the women in the book are still in ag tech, are still going with their companies, which surprised me, actually. I didn't know how many would be continuing in the challenges of being an entrepreneur. But I mean, Martha might be able to speak to this as well, but I think there's been a growing interest in the investment from investors and growers in ag tech, especially with the pandemic. Right.
What do you think, Martha? Is that something that you've seen, the interest? What's it been like keeping your company going through the pandemic?
Yeah, I'd say that you're right, Amy, on a couple areas. One, I always was puzzled when I went into the industry that a lot of the decision, if not all the decisions on the food buy and food supply were done by gentlemen, but the number one consumer was the woman on the store. I mean, today you have more fathers shopping, but 80% or 90% of the shopping happens to be women. So that was interesting to me to see that very few, if none, women in the produce industry, both on the buying and side. That was number one. But number two, the amount of workers. So it was like a sandwich, the workers and the buyers, but the decision makers in the middle were gentlemen, right? So like, wow, okay. But then I went into a further research on my own, and I found out that on the farms, which 90-some% of our farms are family-owned farms, well, who makes the decision in the family? And tends to be the wife. So guess what? When I started traveling the world, I will work with the wife of the farmer, and I will get more done than when I work with the gentleman of the farm. Because at the end of the day, and we had done focus groups in the United States, the gentleman will not spend money unless the wife approves, or the sister, or the mother. I mean, it's not like I'm going to buy a tractor. It's like, oh, honey, we're going to buy a tractor, right? Kind of thing. So I started saying, okay, wait a minute. So they have been there. Then the second part, over 20-some years ago, I remember on my first meeting, literally with Mr. Allen Greenspan, of all gentlemen, I remember saying, why is it the census has only one box of the decision-making for the financial? I was thinking financials, right? The financials of the farm. And he said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, there's only one box. So, but the wife is the one who does all the accounting, all the books. She goes to the accountant, she does the banking. pays the payroll. And so he said, that's interesting. Well, that took that conversation till 2017, which the census now has 2 boxes. And now, for the first time in history, we can see that the women making decisions, it went from like 16% women decision makers to now 50-some%, both people make decisions in the farm. So that is pushing us to have more women that are allowed to be the leaders in the farm, and therefore in the farm tech, and at this point, tech, because now we need to get into technology. So I think that we're going to see a really amazing harvest happening in the next 5 to 10 years of these young women in the farm that are the daughters or the young siblings of the farm that are going to say, hey, now I can take over because now I am part of this whole ecosystem, and now I can make this. And the fathers are going to let it go too. And I've seen that more now. The father saying, okay, fine. Okay, the daughter is responsible. She's good. She doesn't go drinking. She doesn't go this. Blah, blah, blah. And so, so I think that, and I mean it good, because I've been around enough to tell you that that's the spirit. So I think that we're going to see a harvest of a good amount of women in ag tech in the next 5 to 10 years worldwide.
That's great. That's great to hear. When you market your company, how do you present the fact that it's owned by and created by a woman? Are you out front with it, or is it the second thing you tell people?
It's a tough place, because if you say you're a woman, would the guys pay attention to you and think that now you're less of a product or less of a solution because you're a woman? Would they come and patronize you with like, fine, she's a woman, let's buy from her, kind of thing? So I don't like people doing that. I don't like anybody buying the product because they patronize it or because they feel bad about me. I want them to buy it because we really are the only ones in the world doing this, because we're the best product in the world. But on the other hand, this is the wave, and we take the serve, and we're taking the serve right now, that the fact that there is a movement about women, minority women, women of color. So let's take the wave and ride the wave. And hopefully, as they put the money into all of us, we are able to make up fast the returns on investments, so we can build enough of us to build the next wave of business women. My goal is to do great, do amazing, get more money, so turn around and get the next generation going, right? It's not to go and buy an island in the Caribbean.
You can invite us all to the island.
Yeah,
we'll talk about agriculture. Yeah. Amy, for you, as you've been doing this over the last X number of years, are you seeing any kind of shift, more women considering it, or women being taken more seriously within the field? What are you seeing?
Oh yes, I'm seeing consistent amount and higher amount of women in the space who are either like launching their own companies or working in the agri-food tech space for like other big agribusinesses that are interested in ag tech. And it's very interesting. And I feel like a lot of them happen to be a little bit younger too, some in their 20s and often in their 20s and maybe early 30s. And I think maybe there's a number of reasons. One is like the STEM, some of them came from really solid STEM programs and even ag bio programs that were in high school. I recently spoke to an entire high school just for agricultural sciences. The high school is agricultural sciences, and there are 300 students there from grade 9 to 12, and a good number are young women. Spoken to some of the groups with the Future Farmers of America and 4-H, and there are a good number of young people there, and they are women who want to get into the space, and those organizations are also trying to develop a curriculum and programs that incorporate ag tech in as well. And then I think that there's like accelerators and incubators now, a growing number of them, that really want to have a special eye out to bring in talented women founders in the space and get them ramped up and started. So I think there's a number of reasons. And recently I started, along with 4 other women in ag tech, a searchable directory of women in ag tech. That's what it's called, Searchable Directory of Women in Ag Tech. we wanted to make it open source and really accessible to everybody who wants to share the table and also submit their own names to it so they can be included. We're hoping to have it so that more growers, investors, women interested in the space can connect with each other. So absolutely, I agree with Martha. I think that, that the wave, there's this wave that's there, and it's good to ride the wave, but hopefully it'll be something that's part of a paradigm shift. It'll just be part of the fabric and not just a trend.
That sounds like something we should link to when we put this video up on YouTube, your directory.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That would be great.
I want to shift gears just for a moment. And Amy, if you could talk a little bit about the process of making the book. Was it your idea? Were you approached by someone? What was it like putting the whole book together and getting it through to publication?
Well, how long do we have? No, I'm just... So from start to finish, this book was probably 2 years. And I would say that I really wanted to write a book. I said, I'm going to write a book so I can collect the stories. I had not written a book before, so this is my first book. And so I think things that happened is kind of serendipity. I had put out some feelers to different publishing companies that they either didn't answer me or a couple of them said, I don't know how marketable a book, if anybody wants to read a book about ag tech, especially women in ag tech. They said, oh, great idea, but probably not marketable. So it was a bit of, like I said, serendipity that I found a publisher based in California, based in Fresno, actually, who specializes in California history books. And they have a really good market in it, actually. They're really well known and are award winning, and it's a smaller publisher. And I heard back from the publisher, actually, who said, well, this is a really great, really good project. Like, he had seen the documentary and said, these are some awesome women, but also brought up the fact that it might be unlikely maybe, or not, he was uncertain rather who would be reading the book. But I think he had this vision and could see my vision that this is more than a farming book. This is a book about inspiring women leaders, women leadership in the business area. And even if you don't want to be in ag tech, you'll want to pick it up because their stories are very inspirational. So, so basically the publisher agreed to it, and I decided that my journalistic skills actually really helped the book come together, because the way that it's organized is organized as profiles. So there are 30 profiles in this book. And it is very, very photocentric as well, the book. I would say that actually, I'm wondering if the photographer is here. I don't know if he wants to call me out. I see Dexter Farm on this call. Anyway, Dexter, I'll say hi to you and feel free to jump in. Dexter Farm is the chief photographer for this book, who contributed greatly to it. I didn't anticipate it would be a photo book or a coffee table book. What happened was, as the stories evolved, I increasingly looked at the pictures that the women submitted that I had, and I was like, wow, what better way to show what the work they're doing and who they are than rather write it just in written words. So I asked the women to submit their own photos. I said, give me 5 to 6 awesome pictures of you in your childhood, or you growing up, you on the farm, you as farmers. And also Dexter actually went out and I think took several road trips around California to go and photograph the women at their offices, at their farms. So in the end of the day, that's how it was put together, is like portraits and pictures. And also we had contributors, who are leaders in ag tech. So, I think altogether it was not a simple process, but yet it sort of just came together magically in the end. I'm very proud about it because I think that it's a great testament to storytelling and how storytelling can be a really powerful platform in sharing stories about an area that some people would say, wow, this is very technical, ag tech. But you pick up the book and it's not just about farming and it's not just about ag tech. It's about people and the people behind the innovation and the people who have this passion also to make a difference.
Okay, Martha, could you say a little bit about how your actual platform was developed? Did you know enough about tech stuff to develop it yourself, or did you
No,
collaborate?
no.
You had the vision. How did that work for you?
There's something I always try to tell young people. There are a couple of secrets I tell young people they should follow. One is build your common sense as much as you can, because it'll serve you in many areas, whether you're the CEO or you're the, my father used to say, even if you're brooming this, if you're the person who brooms the streets, you should know how to broom the streets. Think about it, right? I mean, be good about it. The common sense is one. But then so the fact that I understood that there was an issue about the farmers across the world, that was my first thinking. How am I going to solve the problem about all farmers in one shot? How do I do that? And then I remember reading the technology software and Microsoft and Bill Gates. I'm like, wow, these people they've gone through the whole world with technology, where it's Apple and the iPhone and this. I'm like, okay, so if we can get to the farmers through technology, we might have the chance of getting them the data so they can perform better. So that was my first thinking, why? Listening, thinking, how other people have done it. So that's kind of common sense. And then the second part is, I always tell people that, or young people, don't put on your resume where you worked, but put on your resume the projects you started and that they're still alive. Because if those projects still working and they're still there without you, that means you were an amazing manager, whatever that worker, and that you knew how to create a sustainable program. And so the idea was, okay, how do we create a product that even if I'm no longer around, is going to stay on its own? It's going to sustain on its own. So many of the projects that I have done, let's say I have one project that is a banana boat per week from Ecuador to St. Petersburg, still working 20 some years later. Or I used to do a vessel of orange juice concentrate from us to Brazil to Australia. And it was a $5 million, $10 million project started. Now it's a $200 million project. Okay? So I'm proud of my projects versus whom I work for, right? And so the same thing here. How do I create something that is going to sustain itself? And so as I started doing this, I went to Stanford University. And that's my third kind of lesson, which is use as much as all the opportunities that we're giving to take advantage of. Like, this is a sustainability program for Latinos, scalable program that was created at Stanford. So if you have a business and you want to make it larger or scale it up, you will apply to that program and you got into the program. So I got into the program, and that's when I was in the world of developing crops. And all of a sudden I had the opportunity to sit down with all these thinkers in Silicon Valley on how to transform what I knew to technology. And that was one of the first legs into the system. Having that little window or door through Stanford, Silicon Valley. Then the second door was UC Davis. The gentleman who runs the whole entrepreneurship program at UC Davis is from Stanford too. I went there and I then validated the product. And if you look at our resume for the last 2 years, I think I've been in every incubator, accelerator, class of anything. And look, I'm old enough not to go to any class, but I'm going to every class that I can, because the world keeps changing. And we can sit and think that what we did was good and it should work, because it would not work. So that has been my mantra, that always go back to being 20 years old in your brain and sit down and make it different. And so that's how I make it sustainable, common sense, and that I would, when I move on, it will stay there.
That's a great segue. Speaking of transitions and what comes next, Amy or Martha, or both of you, based on what you see right now in the industry, based on the pandemic apparently starting to ease, what do you think comes next with women in ag tech?
Yeah, what comes next for women in ag tech is is a growing, not just growing, but an interest, a strong interest in food systems and in that space of who's growing our food, how it's grown, where it goes, and ag tech plays a critical role in that because farmers continue to face a lot of threats and challenges under climate change. There's a lack of field workers out there to provide the help that farmers need. There's water and land management problems. And technology can play an innovation specifically can play a really positive role in providing solutions for those issues, whether it be in robotics and automation, whether it be in artificial intelligence, blockchain, whether it be in sensors or soil testing kits. And I think there's a real need for human labor in this, a new kind of workforce who has the knowledge and the passion to operate those kinds of innovations and technology. So I see it as a balance between innovation and also human labor as well. So I think it's a really wonderful opportunity in time, and it's only going to grow. I don't think the wave is actually quite here yet. I think we have yet to see things really, really develop. I'm talking about, 5 years, 10 years horizon, and you're seeing that now with colleges and universities are developing programs, within their bigger programs for ag tech, agri-food tech, food sciences, and they're also partnering with entrepreneurs. We see that with a lot of even the local governments are actually seeing opportunities for the workforce as well. So I see it as an interconnection with everything from policymakers all the way to, the education as well.
What do you think, Martha?
I would say that definitely the one thing that COVID-19 didn't wipe out was sustainability. If, in fact, it emphasized sustainability across the world. And so that's the good news, because I've seen more chief sustainable officers becoming the women corporate world, moving up the ladder in that position. And that impacts the whole corporation, which makes it a difference for all of us on the other side. So I would say that that sustainability common language across the world is good for us women. I would say the hardest part we're going to have is our own sustainability, because it is not easy to be an entrepreneur. And I say that because I raised 2 kids under entrepreneurship, and they know every single hole in the wall in Salinas, every crop, every mountain, everything. I have a picture of my kids being raised in the whole valley. And they were part of my journey, but not every mother has that flexibility, right? To bring the kids to work. I brought my kids to work. And so I'd say that we have to find continuously the way to make sure that women are taking care so they can raise a family and still do this entrepreneurship or development of tech within corporations, because it's kind of a scientific world. And one of my heroes is Madame Curie, which is the famous scientist. And she was absorbed by science, because this technically absorbs you. And the daughters grew up with her, but she had the proper environment to raise the kids in the lab and all that. We don't. The woman who goes to work has to leave the kids somewhere. And that's, so this COVID-19 might help us now let women stay more at home, do some work from home, and be able to still be an entrepreneur, whether it's intrapreneur in the corporation or entrepreneur outside. Hopefully that's one of the biggest changes that I think we should do from the policy side of it and from the corporate side of it, government side.
Very good. We're going to shift over to Q&A right now. And one of the things Isela is going to do, we want to make sure everyone knows how to get hold of Amy's book so they can read the whole book and read up on Martha as part of it. I encourage any of you, the library has copies of Amy's book that are available for checkout, or if everyone here has it checked out, you can put it on hold. We have a local bookstore, downtown Book and Sound. And then there were 2 websites that Amy had listed on her her page, and we're going to put all of those links into chat. So be sure and check there. And with that, let's take some time for questions.
So I'm just curious, like, what are some of the big like tech innovations that either Amy or Martha like have come across? Because when I think of like tech in the ag industry, I think of the traditional like machinery and tractors. So I'd be really interested in learning more about how tech has changed and where it's headed towards.
I can jump in there. Yeah, absolutely. When I start to do my research, I thought of tech as farm equipment and tractors, which are becoming very, very techy themselves. They drive themselves, a lot of the John Deere tractors, and have a GPS system as well. But I'll give an example, and seeds, there's a company that I did research on called Inari, and they are developing seeds that are more pest resistant, disease resistant. I mean, that's a tremendous problem when it comes to farming, is pests, various kinds of pests. Also seeds that are more simply grower friendly. They may need less water, for example. So that's an example, I feel, of innovation that is sort of, in the next wave of things. And also robotics and automation, I mean, continues to become more sophisticated. It's so important to have somebody to be harvesting the fruit. Otherwise they become orphaned fruit and vegetables out there. And that goes to the issue of food waste. So I think a lot has come up from the days of having the machines that are shaking the apple trees where the apples fall to the ground, to machines today that might be able to pick more sensitive fruits potentially in the future, like berries, that right now we need human beings to pick certain fruits because they have the sensitive touch. Even with cauliflower, if you press too deep on a cauliflower, the fingerprints will be there and they'll be bruised. So I see a ton of opportunity in those areas.
I would say on my side, being the chemist biologist that I am, and I see that is the soil issues, the new varieties issues, you can see that famous company Appeal that now has the cover of how the avocado cover is now managed so they can last longer. So there's a lot of biochemistry areas in AgTech that we see very few. And I remember this because when I used to travel overseas, I used to go to the labs where they would do the food tech or the food innovation. And these are countries that didn't have much, but you see young women in the lab trying to come up with ideas or things like that. So I think, and for that you require patience. You require to take notes and take details, and that's a very heavy patience business. And so I think that would be a good trend for I see a lot of women going that direction in genomes and things of that nature. So I would say that's AgTech, because one of those discoveries can change a whole circle of plants or variety of plants or whatever that is, right?
Thank you.
Very good. Who else has a question?
Amy, I have your book right here. It's beautiful.
Yay, Albert.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi. How do you like the pictures in it? The ones I saw in the sample online were just beautiful.
Oh, they are. Gosh, I just can't imagine how much this thing costs to publish even. I've done brochures and literature like this, and it costs a lot to publish something like this. And it's color, that's what makes it really expensive. Mm-hmm. But thank you, Amy, and really nice seeing all of you on this presentation. And look forward to seeing you guys again sometime. I'm in Salinas, so if you come through here, just come and see us at the Library Community Service.
There you go. Thank you so much, Albert. Yeah, I mean, Albert, you made a good point, though. The book is fairly hefty. It's sort of a borderline between, it's about 1.5 pounds. And the reason why I like that is because there are so many rich photos, and Salinas is also really highlighted in the book. The first chapter is actually all about how ag tech started in Salinas and why it plays such a critical role in Salinas. But yet I don't see it just as a Salinas Valley book. I see that Salinas has played such a critical role and an important role in agriculture that it's a global, it's a microcosm of what's happening globally. So yeah, thank you so much, Albert.
Very good point, Amy.
All right, who else has a question or comment?
We have a comment from Jen. Do you have advice on how to get young women / girls excited about ag tech? She has a 13-year-old daughter.
I'll leave it to Amy. After all the 30 interviews she did, I bet she has some ideas.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. 13-year-old girls in junior high or middle school and into high school, even younger. I think one way, I'm going to be specific here. I feel like, and I'm seeing this, I see more schools from K to 12 actually developing competitions that encourage entrepreneurship. And I think a great thing to extend upon is to use ag tech as part of that. I think it's a great way to educate what's happening with the climate change, the challenges that farmers are facing, and also at the same time, what are some of the solutions? Do they have some solutions that could help farmers locally, and they can work in teams together? I think it really, and there's prizes. I know the universities give some substantial prizes to young entrepreneurs. I know in the book that I have, one of the women, Ellie Sims of the B Corps, she started her company when she was like 21, maybe 20 years old, when she was at the Indiana University, and it came from a competition. So that's one way. And also to connect with women like Martha, and Martha and several of the women in the book have, expressed that they would like to be mentors and speak at schools. And I think what better way to do that for young women and girls, because I remember the days when I was in 7th and 8th grade and it was career day and parents would come in and say, oh, I do this or this or this, but what better way to see a woman, women of all backgrounds in the space and share their stories too.
I would say that I'll follow my mother's guidance. She had so many students. She had around 20,000 students at one time between all the schools and universities. And she always said that we parents are the gatekeepers of the success of our kids. And if we always tell them how wonderful they are, how smart they are, how precious they are, but it's an ongoing process. And I've done it with my kids. Because that's builds self-confidence, a lot of self-confidence. Versus in the past, and this is maybe my culture, and that's my Hispanic culture. I cannot speak for all the cultures. We used to do something and it went wrong. Say, you see, you don't know what you're doing. It's kind of an attitude that I don't know where it comes from. Sociologists might find that, but my mom disliked that. And continuously, she even brought a psychologist into the school system to change that culture. And when I came to the United States, I love this, that no matter how bad you look, I look at Amy and say, Amy, you have beautiful earrings. I mean, we're always looking for the good of every one of us. So I think we start at home. If we can do 2-3 times a day, hey, you're so smart, you're so wonderful. Oh my gosh, you're doing great. Oh my goodness, you're precious. That continues will build the confidence of us girls and women, because we have come from a place where we had not been built up. Because if a guy does it, oh, it's wonderful. If a girl does it, you didn't good enough. So I think that self-confidence at home will be important in my mind, and through the mother that I had in the education system.
Very good. Other questions or comments? All right, well, Amy and Martha, we really appreciate you guys sharing this hour with us. It's such an important thing, not only here in the Salinas Valley, but across the world, and seeing the innovation and the cutting edge and the determination that the women who are profiled in this book have, I think is really inspiring. Any last thoughts from either of you?
I'll just thank Amy forever, because besides the fact that she put me on the book, she was an amazing interviewer. She started pulling a lot of things that kind of you put away, and she started pulling and pulling, and all of a sudden, like, oh shoot, yes, I remember that. Oh. So she's a great interviewer. So thank you for that, Amy. You made me think a lot of many things that I had put away, because again, you land in a new country, you're in survival mode, you forget these things, you just go with the flow. So thank you, Amy, for that, because I bet you didn't do it only with me, you did it with all the women. So thank you for that. And then Kathy, I'll visit with you next week, that I stop by and say hello.
Yeah, I want to thank all the contributors and all the women in the book, because they shared their stories and they took the time to answer all the phone calls. They did not block me. Every single email, every single phone call, all through, and the fact-checking process and everything, which was quite lengty, you know, at times, and there was a lot of back and forth. So I really think all of us played a role in putting this together, and I'm hoping someday that the book will serve as you know, that 50 years from now, somebody will go to the library and pick it up and say, wow, that was really interesting. And who knows what will happen 50 years from now, but it's a part of history. It will be a part of history, and California history as well.
Great. That's a great way to wind it up. Let me just say that I'm adding my contact info. Anyone who would like to get on our weekly e-newsletter to find out about other programs as fabulous as the one that Amy and Martha have given us today. If you drop me an email, I'll get you on our mailing list. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today.